The heat set heavy on Trinidad Ave that night, humid air clinging to every shirt and slowing every breath. Music thumped out of parked Chevys. Scooters whined past like mosquitoes with engines, and old heads leaned against the liquor store wall like they'd been part of the brick since the 80s. I leaned on a stop sign, white tee sticking to my back, black Nat's cap pulled low, my gold tooth flashing whenever I laughed, the kind of laugh that was half shield, half habit. Beside me was Reek, hoodie light over his shoulders, clean fade catching the street light, my sandbox brother, the one I thought would never fold. In the city where loyalty was currency, we thought we were rich.
Reek slid his phone in his pocket, eyes scanning scooters buzzing by. "Word is paperwork floating," he said, tone casual, but eyes not so calm. "They saying somebody on the block been writing. Somebody been eating off us." I chuckled, not because it was funny, but because that's how I kept fear from sitting too close. "Every summer got a new ghost story, Slim," I said. "Last year was jump out boys hiding in ice cream trucks. Year before it was drones over the alley. Paperwork, man. If it was real, we'd have seen it." But deep down, I knew whispers on a DC block were like mold. Once it started growing, it spread fast. A pack of young teens on scooters sped past, grinning like they knew the script already. One shouted, "Snitch talk," and the rest laughed hard before peeling off into the night. Reek tugged at his hoodie string. Little nervous tick he thought I never noticed. I clocked it. Let it slide. Sometimes you spare a brother the question you scared of the answer to. Uncle Dre stomped up the block, boots hitting pavement heavy, bald head shining under the street light. "Y'all too comfortable," he said, voice deep, eyes older than the city itself. "Comfort on this block is dangerous." He eyed me, then Reek, like he was reading cracks in the concrete instead of faces.
"You heard the talk now," he said. I rolled my eyes, trying to laugh it off. Every summer it's the same. Somebody calling rat, somebody ends up smoked behind a lie. Dre tapped his temple. Sometimes the lie look like truth when you blind to who feeding you. I hated when he spoke in riddles. Made me feel like a boy on the stoop again. But the way Reek's shoulders twitched made me wonder if Dre wasn't preaching to me at all. Tasha pulled up in her Altima, braids swinging as she leaned out. "Now, don't stay out all night. You know I don't trust this block," she said, voice tight with worry. I kissed her cheek quick, promised I'd come home before midnight. She shook her head and pulled off, brake lights cutting red lines down the street. Reek smirked. "She the reason you still got your head straight, Slim." I laughed hollow, because he wasn't wrong. That's when the unmarked Impala rolled slow, creeping like a shark fin under the streetlights. Detective Morris behind the wheel, African-American, suit jacket tossed in the back, AC fog in the glass. He stopped, looked dead at me, then at Reek, long enough to scrape nerves raw. "Good evening, gentlemen," he said, like he already knew the ending. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, just let the silence stretch like ropes. Morris smiled like he had a secret, then pulled off slow, tires crunching gravel. Reek shifted hard, muttering, "Why he always staring at us like that?" I forced a grin. "Because we stars, Slim. Even cops can't stop staring." But inside, my chest tightened because Morris didn't look like a fan. He looked like a man waiting for a clack to run out. As the black thinned, dice games dying, music fading, I lit a cigarette I didn't even want. Reek stood beside me, quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that speaks louder than words. The street light flickered, buzzing like it was debating whether to give us light or leave us blind. I stared up at the smoke curling skyward, whispering under my breath, "Whatever's coming, Lord, don't let it be what I think it is." Reek's phone buzzed twice in his pocket. He didn't answer, didn't even flinch. The sound stuck to my ribs like a bad omen. We split at the alley, where our childhood paths forked. His right, mine left. I glanced back, Saw him standing still, hoodie up, hands buried, like the pavement was confessing to him. He caught me watching, gave me a chin lift. I nodded back and kept walking into the kind of silence that don't let you sleep.
The next morning, the block smelled like rain that never came, and whispers carried heavier than smoke. Every face I passed wore questions in their eyes, not loud, but sharp enough to cut if I stared too long. Old Miss Jenkins, sweeping her stoop, paused when I walked by, broom stilled midair, lips pressed tight. Kids bouncing basketballs slowed their dribble, watching like I was part of the rumor mill too. It felt like everybody wanted to say something, but nobody wanted to be the first name attached to the word snitch. DC don't whisper without a reason. The air itself felt heavier, like even the pigeons were suspicious. I ducked into the corner store, bell above the door flat as ever. Mr. Lewis behind the counter raised an eyebrow, slid me a bottle of water without asking. "You look like you carrying bricks, son," he said. Voice calm, but eyes tired. "Bricks heavier than soda crates," I muttered, cracking the cap, letting cold water bite my throat. He leaned closer, voice dropping. "The block don't need proof. All it need is a headline." I nodded, even though I hated hearing it out loud. When I stepped back outside, the whispers followed me like shadows you can't shake. By noon, Reek showed up in my spot. Hoodie half-zipped, sweat glistening like nerves. He dropped on my couch, eyes darting from window to door like he expected the walls to testify. "You here to talk?" he said, voice sharp, defensive before I could even answer. "I heard a lot of talk," I said slow. "Question is, how much of it is true?" He stood up too quick, hands balling fist. "You think it's me?" I didn't answer. Silence was heavier than words. He kicked the table leg, stormed toward the door. "Man, you tripping. We blood thicker than paperwork." When the door slammed, the echo hung around longer than the sound itself. I sat back, heart racing, mind twisting every memory of us into puzzle pieces that no longer fit. Drake called my phone that evening, voice flat, no greeting. "Don't let loyalty blind you, Wood. Bends before it breaks." I rubbed my temples. "You saying what I think you saying?" He said, "I'm saying, keep your eyes open, youngin'. Pressure either makes men diamonds or dust." He hung up before I could reply, leaving me with silence that felt like judgment. That night, the block gathered in clusters, dice clacking louder than usual, music turned up to drown suspicion. But the louder it got, the more obvious the silence was whenever Reek walked past. Eyes slid off him too quick, laughs cut short. Nobody asked him to join the game. I stood across the street watching my brother shrink inch by inch under a verdict not yet written, but already delivered. My chest burned with anger and grief, both aimed at the same man, both tearing me from opposite sides. Pressure was rising, and even concrete cracks when the heat won't let up. I knew something had to give, and soon. That night, I walked past the wreck, hoop echoing against the bent rim, kids yelling over fouls. Sincere, one of the teens always shadowing us, jogged up. "Yo, Nail, they saying your man's signing papers." I stopped cold. "Who told you that?" I asked, voice sharper than I meant. He shrugged. "Everybody. Papers got copies. I seen one screenshot floating on IG. My stomach flipped, because screenshots don't sprout out of nowhere. They come from files, and files come from pens. I waved Sincere off, but my heart was beating like a bass line with no melody. The setup was clear. It wasn't just rumors. It was paperwork waiting to drop like a hammer. Back at the apartment, Tasha paced, braids swinging, face tight with worry. "Nell, I can't keep watching you act like this ain't real. If Reek is in that paperwork, you gotta face it." I slammed my fist on the table, not at her, but at the world pressing down. "He my brother, Tosh. You don't turn your back on blood just 'cause ink say so." She touched my arm, voice softer. "Sometimes blood lies louder than ink." I pulled away, pacing, chest hot, mine split between loyalty and survival. Her silence after that cut deeper than her words. Sometimes love refuses to argue because it already knows. The next day, Dre dragged me to the job site early, threw a hammer in my hand like it was scripture. "Build something straight. It'll clear your head," he said, his eyes watching me closer than the beams. I drove nails into wood, each hit releasing some of the fire inside me. But even with sawdust on my skin, the whispers clung to me like sweat. At lunch, Dre finally spoke. "Youngin', setups don't come from enemies. They come from the ones sitting closest at your table." I swallowed hard because I already knew who he meant, and I hated him for saying it out loud. When work ended, I didn't feel clean. I felt cornered. That night, the block was humming. Cars idling, music thumping, dice rattling in alleys. I walked to the corner, and there he was, Reek, standing like he belonged and didn't all at once. He spotted me, smirked, then walked over slow. "We good?" he asked, voice too casual. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders, shake answers out of him. Instead, I said, "We straight." He nodded, but his eyes darted, scanning like he was looking for an exit that wasn't there. And in that moment, I realized the setup wasn't just his, it was mine too. The block was watching, waiting, ready to pick sides the second the papers dropped. The interrogation room smelled like metal and stale coffee. Wrists sore from the cuffs, chest burning worse when Detective Morris slid the folder across the table. I flipped it open and froze. Confidential informant, Reginald Johnson. Rack, my brother, my sandbox partner, the one I thought would never fold. The room spun slow like a warped record, my mouth dry, words breaking like glass. "No," I whispered, voice cracking. "That ain't him. That's not Rack." But the ink didn't change. It stayed loud, stayed final. Morris leaned back, folding arms like a man who'd seen the ending already. He said, "I didn't type it. Your friend did." I slammed my fist on the table. The folder jumped, but didn't vanish. "You lying, Slim! You playing games!" I barked, but Morris didn't blink. "If I was lying, I'd make it easier," he said, finger topping the page slow, deliberate. "You think you know him, but every man got a price. Freedom, money, pressure, something." His words landed like punches, each one daring me to stop believing. Later, they cut me loose, court dates stamped on my back like a curse. When I walked outside the precinct, the sky was bleeding orange into purple. Tasha pulled up fast, jumped out before the car stopped rolling, arms around me. "You good now? What happened?" she whispered, fear hot in her voice. I held her tight. "Don't ask me yet, not here." But across the street, two teens pointed, whispering, phones in their hands like they already had the news. Reek's name was moving quicker than I could breathe. We drove back to the block, Dre waiting on the stoop, boots planted like roots. He looked at me once, nodded slow. "They showed you papers." "You knew?" I asked, throat tight. "I suspected," he said. "Boy been moving funny for months." Anger ripped through me. "Why you ain't tell me?" He shrugged, eyes steady. "Would you have listened?" I wanted to scream yes, but silence answered for me, and it didn't lie. That's when I saw him, Reek, at the far end of the block, hoodie up, standing like a ghost with weight. Our eyes locked, 1 second of childhood flashing. Bikes, freeze pops, summer laughs. Then it shattered. I stepped forward. "Reek," I shouted, voice sharp as broken glass. He didn't run, didn't speak, just dropped his eyes to the pavement. The block hushed. Even the go-go bass from the car dipped quiet. Dre's hand clamped my shoulder. "Not here, youngin'. Not now." I clenched fists, nails biting palm, every muscle screaming to move, but Dre's grip held me. Reek turned, walked away slow, each step louder than gunfire. Tasha whispered beside me, voice cracking, "Lord, keep him." I didn't know if she meant me, or him, or both. That night, I lay staring at the ceiling fan. The papers burned into my mind. Every laugh, every memory now painted over with betrayal. Uncle Dre's words echoed. Wood don't lie. It bends or it breaks. I didn't know which one I was yet, but I knew the block already made its choice for him. But the next morning, the block was humming like a rumor factory. Every porch, every corner, every phone buzzing with one headline. Reek's name was everywhere, painted in whispers, tagged in half-truths. I walked to the carryout and conversations died mid-sentence. Eyes slid off me too fast, like people were scared loyalty was contagious. The cashier pushed my food across the counter with no small talk. On the way out, I caught two dudes I knew pointing at me, one saying low, "That's his man." Betty knew too, and the words hit harder than fists. Back home, the phone rang non-stop. Cousins, neighbors, even people I barely talked to, all fishing for confirmation, like my pain was entertainment. Tasha muted the ringer, her face tight. "No, you can't keep carrying his weight. It's breaking you." I rubbed my forehead, sighing. If I don't defend him, it feel like I'm admitting it's true. She touched my hand gentle. Sometimes silence is defense too. You don't owe explanations to people who already chose a verdict. Her words sat heavy, because deep down I knew she was right. But knowing and believing are two different fights. By evening, Dre pulled up, boots stopping across the floor, thermos in his hand as always. He dropped in a chair opposite me, eyes steady. Fallout was coming, youngin'. The block don't forgive paperwork. I snapped. So I'm supposed to just let go? Pretend like my brother didn't ride from me all those years? Dre sipped slow. Riding ain't the same as writing. One builds trust, the other breaks it. I clenched my jaw, his riddles cutting sharp in the knives. Outside, a group of teens shouted Reek's name every curse word. The fallout was loud, and it wasn't done spreading. That night I stepped onto the stoop, block buzzing louder than a hive. Two dudes across the street laughed fake, phones out, recording me like I was a documentary. I wanted to bark, to swing, to shut it all down. But Dre's words echoed. Don't let him write your ending. I sat instead, cigarette lit, smoke curling into the humid air. Neighbors stared through blinds. Headlights crept slow down the avenue. The block wasn't just watching, it was waiting to see if I'd crack like he did. Later, Tasha sat beside me, sliding her hand into mine, voice quiet. They testing you now. The fallout ain't about him no more. It's about you. I swallowed hard, staring at the cracked sidewalk. Feels like they punishing me for something I didn't sign. She leaned close, whispering, that's the price of being loyal. Sometimes the fire burns you just for standing near. Her words wrapped me in equal parts comfort and fear, because she was right. The fire didn't care who started it. By midnight, the fallout hit harder. Reek's name sprayed on a brick wall down by the court. Big red letters screaming, Snitch, across faded paint. I stood staring at it, fists tight. That wall used to carry murals for the dead, tributes to those the block lost. Now it carried a sentence for the living, one my brother couldn't escape. I thought about grabbing paint, covering it, defending him like old times. But my feet stayed still, silence louder than action, heart heavier than bricks. Walking back home, the block felt colder. Conversations dropped when I passed. Laughter turned to whispers. Even kids too young to know better mimicked older voices. Snitch this, paperwork that. Each word stung like stones. Back inside, I sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning lazy. I whispered under my breath, Lord, if fallout is the cost, give me strength not to fold with it. Because right then I knew this wasn't just his storm anymore. It was mine too. The fallout couldn't sit quiet forever. It was only a matter of time before the truth and the lie collided in the open. By Wednesday night, the block was crowded, dice games loud, music thumping from parked cars. But the energy was sharp, everybody waiting on a spark. Reek showed up near the corner store, hoodie up, eyes darting but jaw set. And just like that, the whispers turned into silence. I felt it in my chest. The
The moment to choose wasn't coming tomorrow. It was standing right in front of me.
I crossed the street slow, each step heavier than the last. Reek lifted his chin, tried to smile, but it bent crooked. "Now, we brothers, you know me. You know I ain't no snitch," he said fast, too fast. I stared at him, voice low. "Then why the paperwork got your name on it?" His eyes twitched, hands buried deep in his hoodie pocket. "You believe them over me?" he asked, words sharp, desperate. The block leaned in, ears wide, hearts hungry for a verdict.
"I believe what I seen," I said steady, chest tight but voice holding. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like the street itself was taking notes. Reek shook his head hard. "They set me up, Slim. They always hated me. You supposed to know better." I took a breath, anger boiling. "You my brother, but you put my name on a page. You ain't just betrayed a block, you betrayed me." His face broke for a second, eyes wet but jaw still locked, and I realized he wasn't going to admit it. Not here, not ever. Uncle Dre stepped forward from the stoop, boots heavy, voice cutting through the air. "Truth don't need a microphone. It shows itself," he said. People nodded, some whispering, some shaking heads, but nobody moved closer. Reek glanced around like the block itself had turned witness. "You gonna let them kill me with lies?" he shouted at me, voice cracking. I clenched fists, heart hammering. "I ain't gotta let them. You already signed your own ending." The silence after felt heavier than a gun cocking. Tasha pushed through the crowd, grabbed my arm, eyes burning. "Nell, don't do this here, not in front of everybody. Don't let them make you crash out." Her words shook me because I wanted to swing, to release all the betrayal in my chest. But Dre's hand on my shoulder was firm, grounding. "This ain't about fists," he said low. "This about what side of history you stand on." I pulled in a deep breath, staring at Reek, the crowd waiting for an explosion that never came. Instead, I spoke calm, louder than I felt. "We grew up together, but the man I knew is gone. You walked away the second you signed your name." Gasps rolled through the block, people shifting, whispers turning into judgment. Reek's eyes widened, rage and hurt battling on his face. "You choosing them over me?" he spat, voice breaking. I shook my head. "I'm choosing the truth." The crowd exhaled as one, the confrontation sealing itself in memory.
Reek backed away slow, shoulders caving, eyes glassy. Nobody followed. Nobody called his name. He was already erased. I stood frozen, chest heavy, wishing the papers had been lies, wishing loyalty didn't cost so much. Tasha gripped my hand, whispering, "You did what you had to." But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like burial. The block had witnessed the confrontation, and now there was no going back, only fallout to come.
By Wednesday, the city had already decided what it believed. D.C. don't wait on judges. Sidewalks hand out sentences before courtrooms do. On the pole outside the corner store, someone taped up a flyer, the shape of paperwork blurred but obvious. Below it in thick marker read, "Loyalty isn't a costume." The paper flapped in the breeze like a slow clap. I kept my head down, tool bag heavy on my shoulder, sweat drying on my collar. Everywhere I turned, people acted like the verdict was already final. The courthouse smelled like cold air and shoe rubber, government buildings allergic to warmth. Dre took the afternoon off to stand with me. Tasha sat on the other side, chin up, braids tied back like armor. Public defender rose and found us in the hallway, smiled tired. "We'll keep it simple," he said. "Plea, continuance, keep your head down, don't react to anything read out loud." Inside the courtroom, cases slid by like groceries on a conveyor belt. Names called, pleas entered, lives nudged along, all routine until they called mine. I stepped forward, stomach heavy, heart unsteady.
"Darnell Carter," the clerk droned, charges read out like receipts. "Not guilty," Rosen answered quick. "Request continuance. Keep it moving." The judge barely looked at me. Eyes over glasses, gavel soft, case stamped with another date. When I turned to leave, my chest tightened. 2 rows back sat Reek,
Hoodie off, suit too big for his frame, face smaller than I remembered. Our eyes met like a car crash, slow, nothing to do but absorb the hit. He didn't mouth words, neither did I. Silence said enough. Out on the hallway, a group of aunties in church hats stopped me, their looks sharp but kind. One squeezed my arm, voice low. "Baby, let God be the echo," then walked on. Her words clung to me like a song lyric I couldn't shake. Back on the block later, verdicts were louder than gavels. Reek sat on a bench near the basketball court, alone. 2 men crossed the street to avoid him. Another muttered, "Paperboy," under his breath without stopping. The street had spoken, and silence was his punishment. That evening, Tasha pulled me toward her mom's place, a southeast walk-up that smelled like lemon cleaner and fried fish. Miss Charlene opened the door, hugged me tight. "You gonna eat, then you gonna breathe," she said. Dinner was baked chicken, mac, greens, cornbread, food that didn't lie. We ate at a plastic-covered table that had seen too many storms and still stood. Halfway through, Charlene folded her hands, her eyes piercing. This family got standards. No crash-outs, no clapbacks for cameras, no funerals we could skip. I nodded, voice cracking, "Yes, ma'am." Because some women are ma'am, no matter your age. After dessert, Dre washed dishes, Tasha dried, and I sat watching, realizing this was a different kind of verdict. Not street, not court, but family. Charlene pressed her brass key into my palm before I left. "Back door to the church pantry," she said. "When pride too loud, go stack shelves, put cans in order. It's good practice." I held the key like it weighed more than it should. "It ain't about deserve, it's about direction," she added. Her words planted something in me I wasn't ready to name yet. On the walk home, the city glowed, sweaty and electric. Teens danced by the bus stop. An old man watered plants in a cracked bucket. A siren wailed somewhere far off, but for once it wasn't aimed at me. Back at the apartment, I leaned my head on the couch beside Tasha, whispering to the ceiling. Street verdict, freeze 'em out. Court verdict, slow and cold. Family verdict, eat, breathe, build. She squeezed my hand. "Then do," she said, simple. I blocked a threatening text that buzzed on my phone right after and set my lock screen to 3 words: straight, square, level. The block never lets you rest long. Soon as you find balance, it shakes the ground just to see if you fall. By morning, I was back on Dre's site, hammer in hand, sweat cutting down my face. The brass key Charlene gave me sat heavy in my pocket like a reminder. Dre watched me swing nails into wood, nodding slow. Roof framing takes balance. Can't do that crooked. I worked harder, trying to drown whispers and sawdust. For a few hours, the noise quieted, only hammers and wood talking back. But the block don't forget. That evening, I cut through the basketball court, the one with candles melted into the pavement for the boy gone too soon. Mo and a stranger leaned on the fence, both watching me like predators bored of waiting. Mo grinned wide, chain flashing. "Nell, whole city talking. You the star now." I kept walking, tool bag heavy in my grip. "Podcast don't pay rent," I shot back. He chuckled. "Neither does swinging a hammer, but you could end this. All it takes is one word to thought." I stopped, turned, and felt the weight of his setup. "One word," I repeated, voice flat, like forgiveness. Mo nodded. "Or else he gonna break. Reek out here dying slow. You could save him." I shook my head, chest tight. "He broke the second he signed my name. You callin' that pressure? I call it manipulation." The stranger shifted nervous, like waiting for a fight. Mo squinted. "So you saying it's done?" "I'm saying he chose reckoning. I'm choosing rise," I answered, and I walked off, leaving Mo's grin cracked in the streetlight. 2 days later, Dre handed me my first clean paycheck in years, stub light but stamped official. I stared at it longer than I should have, felt heavier than a whole brick pack. Dre laughed, sipping from his thermos. I folded it neat, slid it in my pocket. Maybe both, I said. When I showed Tasha, she cried quiet, smile shining through tears. This is Rise, she whispered. That night we ate takeout, grease on our fingers, laughter tasting fresher than any feast. My phone buzzed with another blocked threat. I deleted it without replying.
Rain finally came hard the next night, washing streets like they sinned. I stood on the stoop, hoodie pulled tight, water dripping heavy. Across the avenue, I saw him, Reek, standing soaked, shoulders collapsed, face ghosted in the light. He didn't come closer, didn't wave, just stood long enough to let me know he wanted to, then turned into the downpour, vanishing like a bad memory. I clenched the brass key in my pocket, whispering to myself. Rise, I said low, a prayer and a promise together. The reckoning side showed itself days later, in rumors, fights breaking out, Reek's name shouted, then swallowed by silence. By the time I asked around, he was gone again. Some said couch surfing, some said out of town, nobody certain. The block had decided without me lifting a hand. Punishment wasn't always death. Sometimes it was exile. I sat with that thought, equal parts relief and grief weighing me down. That evening, Dre joined me on the stoop, thermos in hand. Reckoning don't always look like punishment, he said. Sometimes it's just silence, being remembered for the wrong chapter. I nodded slow. And rising, I asked? He tapped my chest. Rising is when your story don't end where they wanted it to, when you pick the pen back up. I glanced at the stub in my pocket, at the brass key heavy beside it, at Tasha humming through the window, steady and warm. I opened my notebook that night and wrote 3 words, straight, square, level. Night pulled the city tight like a hoodie. From the rooftop, I watched D.C. glow in bruised colors, sirens stitching red and blue across the sky. The brass key Charlene gave me knocked against my thigh with every slow step, a reminder I still had doors that opened. I laid out the week in my head. Dre's level, my job stub, Tasha's hand, the photo with me and Reek as kids. Memories felt like puzzle pieces that didn't fit anymore, but I kept turning them over, hoping meaning would show itself in the cracks. Below me, Mr. Lewis locked the corner store, stood a minute on the sidewalk like a man praying without words, then looked up, waved. I waved back. Small gesture, but it felt heavy. This city measured men by noise. Sometimes the quietest act felt like a graduation. I pulled the paperwork copy from my pocket, creased from folding and refolding. Didn't need to read the name anymore. It lived in my head rent-free. I pressed it to the parapet ledge, wind tugging, but I didn't let go. Forgiveness ain't always for the other man. Sometimes it's just so you can breathe. Not churchy, not loud, just private. I wasn't ready to hand Reek mercy, but I was ready to stop letting ink decide my future. Below, 2 teens dribbled a flat ball. Spotted me. You nail? One shot at bowl. Maybe, I said, leaning over. He grinned. Coach said, you still hoop. You sliding through tomorrow? I laughed honest. Yeah, I slide. And their cheers echoed like hope on concrete. Back inside, Tisha asked for a memory. Something old that still fits, she said. I told her about Dre taking me to smell lumber at 9 years old. Said beginnings smell like wood and glue. I didn't get it then, but I do now. She smiled. Tell me another. I said Miss Green's freeze pops, blue tongues and Reek's laugh sounding like summer. Her eyes softened. Grief is when the laugh echoes and the body's gone. My throat tightened, voice cracking, because she was right. On the table, I set 3 things: my stub, the level, and the framed photo of me and Reek at 13. We looked bony and loud, trophy between us, joy stamped instead of paperwork. This a memorial, I told Tasha, not for who he is now, but for who we were. She kissed my shoulder, whispering, that's grown.
Later, I walked to the pantry with the brass key, shelves leaning. I stacked cans until order returned, each thunk louder than gavel strikes. Brother Ellis peeked in. "You pray while you work?" he asked. I answered, "Sometimes I just breathe," and he nodded. "That'll do." Walking back the block felt different. Still buzzing, but not sharp. Space in it for my thoughts to stretch. Flyers on poles had peeled, wind carrying scraps like dead leaves. At home, Tasha slept on the couch, candles still warm. I covered her, tucked the blanket, and whispered thanks for her steady love. In the bedroom, I slid the paperwork copy into a drawer. Not shrine, not trophy, just record. History belongs in drawers, not in my hand. I lay back, palms on my chest, ceiling fan humming lazy circles. Breathing matched the city's ragged rhythm. Meaning didn't announce itself. It came in tools, a stub, a key, a photo. You keep 'em close. You reach for 'em when the block writes your name wrong. On the edge of sleep, I pictured Reek on another roof, hoodie damp with rain. Didn't wish him back, didn't wish him gone. Just wished him a drawer for his ghosts. Tomorrow would come whether I cooperated or not, and I planned to cooperate. Morning slid in soft, sunlight cracking through blinds slow. For the first time in weeks, I didn't wake to sirens in my chest. The level and brass key sat in the dresser catching light. My job stub thumbtacked above it, crooked but proud. Beside them, a framed photo of me and Rika's kids, loud smiles frozen before betrayal had a name. Tasha stirred under the blanket, eyes blinking. "You up early?" she murmured. "Mine too calm," I said, half laughing, and she smiled. "That's a blessing." She asked what was on my list. I said work, pantry, maybe help Mal and Sincere at the court. "After that, just breathe," I added, and she nodded. On Trinidad Ave, the block was moving, but not buzzing like before. Flyers had peeled off poles, conversations lighter though, eyes still watched. Mr. Lewis outside the store nodded. Consistency gets respect, even without applause. I tipped my chin, grateful. At the rec, the boys called, "Big bro, you hooping later?" And I promised, after work, don't waste your shots yet.